Hello and welcome to MHA Larkin Gowan's Insights. If you are listening to this in chronological order, this is our second insight. And while in podcasty land it is not normal to date check, I feel it is important to highlight that this recording is being made in October 2020. And for all intents and purposes, a trade deal between the EU and the UK has not been agreed. Posturing suggests we'll be leaving with no deal, but there has, at least in my perception, been a bit of an olive branch, so we will see. But this podcast assumed there is no deal in place. Oh yes, again for clarity, my name is Chris Scargill, and I'm a business advisor at MHA Larkin Gowan, and we are putting together a series of podcasts on key issues for business as we reach the end of the period of transition and the date of 1 January 2021 looms large. So we'll be looking to explore some of the issues and consequences of Brexit and what businesses need to do, avoiding where possible political bias or observation. Now, I did say we, so that means I will not be alone, and that makes it the perfect time to introduce today's specialist guest. So I welcome the person, the colleague, who will help me through the maze of assumption, presumption, and ultimate legislation. And that's my head techie guy, Rob Skilton, who's an advisor in our indirect taxes team, and for all the right reasons, is all over Brexit. Hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Chris. It's not often I get invited back to talk technical twice in such quick succession, so I'm savouring the moment.
Well, good of you. But being my techie guy, come on, give me a fact for the day.
Okay, so my interesting fact for you, Chris, you mentioned the olive branch earlier. Did you know that the olive tree would have had an 8.3% EU tariff rate, but under the UK global tariffs, which are proposed to take effect from 1st of January if we don't agree a deal, that will be liberalised down to 0%, making your olive tree perhaps a little bit cheaper than it might otherwise have been.
Excellent. So great news for the garden centre and all those people collecting olive trees. Well done, Rob. Thank you very much. Fabulous fact. In our last podcast, we discussed tariffs and the potential impact on businesses. And due to its importance, we said, even while no deal was in place, we recommended to our listener that if they had not already done so, and were going to trade in with the EU or were planning to trade with the EU, they should do certain things, Rob. What were they?
Right, so I think last time we had three top tips. The first one was that the business needs to sort out an EORI number if they don't already have one. An EORI being an economic operator registration and identification number.
Easy for you to say.
Indeed. And that will be required to complete customs declarations when moving goods cross-border from the 1st of January. Tip number 2 was that all businesses, whether they're importing or exporting, review their supply chains and identify the commodity codes for the products that they're either importing or exporting. And finally, tip number 3 was that businesses should look at the UK global tariffs or the EU tariffs, depending which way they're moving goods, to understand what the likely duty charge is going to be. It's an additional irrecoverable cost to the business, so it's worth knowing now.
Certainly is, Rob. Thank you. And good to recap. And the detail was covered in the podcast, so anyone who missed that can go back and listen, but only after listening to this one. We've promised already, having previously left the listener on the tantalizing note that we'd be following up with a podcast on warehousing and duty reliefs to talk about it. That was a bit of a cliffhanger, so I guess that day has come. Remind me, Rob.
Right, so as a bit of a recap, in the absence of a trade deal, many more goods than before are going to be subject to customs duty when they move between the UK and the EU. Customs duty, unlike VAT, cannot be recovered and represents an absolute cost to the business, which is either going to impact profits or it's going to need to be passed on to the customer by increasing prices.
But you had indicated that there may be ways of deferring or even mitigating this cost, all in a perfectly legitimate manner, of course, Rob. That feels like something we should be discussing further.
It certainly does, Chris. It's not going to benefit everyone, but it could make a big difference for those where the rules do apply.
Okay, so talk to me about warehousing.
Okay, so let's imagine a business which imports goods from the Far East and then sells them to customers in the UK and in the EU. Today, there's been customs duty due on the goods when they arrive in the UK. but not the free movement within the EU thereafter as a single market. From the 1st of January, UK duty will still be payable on the goods when they're imported into the UK. However, when the goods move from the UK to the EU, there's now a second duty charge arising because that's another import into a different marketplace.
That doesn't sound fair at all.
No, it doesn't. And that's where a bonded warehouse can come into play. By storing the goods in a warehouse under bond, they're not deemed to have entered the UK yet, so no duty charge arises. Once the goods are removed into the UK market, the duty charge crystallises, as it would always have done. However, the goods that are supplied to the EU can then be moved and declared at the EU border, incurring an EU duty charge, but without incurring a UK one.
So what you're saying is that businesses can defer payment of the duty on the UK goods until they're removed from the warehouse, and it can avoid a UK duty charge altogether on the EU goods?
Absolutely. But unfortunately, it's not all wine and roses.
You're talking about my drinking habits again, aren't you?
It certainly sounds that way. Obtaining bonded warehouse status for your own warehouse requires HMRC approval and will probably require a few upgrades to the security and data management systems. You are, after all, asking HMRC to trust you to correctly monitor stock levels and risk underpayment of tax if something goes wrong.
But what about using someone else's warehouse?
Well, that would work well, but there's potentially a couple of sticking points there. Firstly, you'll be paying them for the privilege of using their warehouse, so you'll need to know that the saving that you're going to make is going to be worth it. Secondly, warehouse space is a bit short at this moment in time, so it may be a challenge to find something locally, given businesses have been snapping up the space available to stockpile goods pre-Brexit.
Okay. So if I can't find warehouse space, there must be some alternatives.
Yes, there are. So if you're bringing the goods into the UK, undertaking a process and then moving them on again, they may qualify for something called inward processing relief. In effect, you bring the goods in for a short period of time, you do something with them and remove them from the UK again. It wouldn't be right that the UK duty is payable when you're bringing the goods into the UK. They don't stay here, but it's supporting the UK economy. So there's a relief if the circumstances fit. There's also something similar for outward processing, so you don't get caught with a duty charge when the goods come back in again. In addition, there's also a temporary admissions relief, but the circumstances are a bit more limited for that one, where goods are brought in for a short period of time to fulfill a specific purpose. There's not a duty charge arising there either.
Okay, that's all well and good, but knowing you, Rob, and how you like to find release for duty and VAT, what happens if I don't qualify?
Well, as ever, there's more guidance on the government and HMRC website about these reliefs. And as you can tell, I'm always happy to have a conversation about VAT and duty. Also, if, for example, the business doesn't qualify because it's bringing the goods into the UK, moving them straight onto the continent without qualifying for a relief, then it may be time to reconsider the logistics. Can the goods be sent directly to the continent rather than coming into the UK first? Maybe using an EU-based subsidiary. But that sounds like a whole nother can of worms. But it could be a good one for a topic on a future podcast, Chris.
Well, you're getting ahead of yourself there, but some really good advice there, Rob. Thank you. And fabulous idea. Okay. Some people may have already listened to the podcast that you've just mentioned, but for those learning in chronological order alongside me, that's a great idea, Rob. So we'll look at that for next time. So first though, I'd like to thank the listener. So thank you, listener. You've been listening to the MHA Larkin Gowan Brexit Insights Bitesize Brexit podcast. And you've been listening to me, Chris Scargill, and you, Rob Skilton. And I'd like to remind my listener that details of what we have covered today are on our dedicated Brexit hub on our website at larking-gowan.co.uk. Right, Rob, I think you're trying to take over with all the good ideas, but okay, let's go with it. Now, what about this money that the government are offering businesses? Are you sure they're not having too many dreams? Are you making this up?